So we are here in our podcast studio today to kind of go over our precision rifle build. So I have Garrett with me, and we're basically going to be going over our competition builds that we've put together and kind of go over like what we use, why we use it, give you some examples of what we like, what we don't like, and why we might have picked the specific products that we have on the rifles. So make sure you like and subscribe to our channel down below. Make sure you click that bell. It's going to give you our notifications. We really appreciate, again, all the support. You guys have just been phenomenal on this. So I really appreciate everybody that's been subscribing to our channel. And we continue to deliver as much content as we can to you guys as fast as we can get it out. So hopefully you enjoy this as well. Again, we're just going to go through our rifle build. Garrett's going to do his and I'm going to do mine. We're going to go back and forth. And any comments and questions that you have, post them down in the comments. We'll get to them. We'll answer them. Yeah, so if you're a PRS shooter, if you're thinking about becoming into PRS or competition, or you just really like just target shooting, hit us up, ask us the questions that you might have about a build. It can be for bolt action. You can also ask us questions about any semi-auto rifles if you're doing semi-auto builds. Obviously, we know a lot about those as well. But these rifles here are our competition builds. So we'll start with how do you want to do this? You want to go tip to butt?
Tip to butt is the normal. That's the standard.
We'll start there. We'll go back and forth again, like between the two of us, and we'll kind of show you what we have and what we use and why we use it.
Yeah, again, man.
So
kick it off.
Yeah. So starting at the tip, obviously full custom build, full action, stock, barrel, all that good stuff. On muzzle, Area 419 Mavericks. I think usually
Wide cover.
these are the standards, right?
And look at that sexy thing.
In the short configuration, right?
Is that in competition mode?
This is, yeah, like the shortest one.
The shortest way to.
I've done a little bit of experimentation with like the extra baffle in it, and I like the extra baffle in it too. It's a different recoil impulse, but I've kind of gone back and forth on it, and I like the little chode look right now. That's kind of how I decide what I'm gonna shoot that day. So I think the 419 Maverick, obviously there's a lot of others now. They have some different alternatives as far as like KGN, where it would Boss, I think, makes one.
Thunder Beast makes it.
And
then Recoil X makes an adapter that goes
right along with like the Silencer Omegas and stuff like that. So the kind of the design with the suppressor and then the brake on the end, it seems to be working well for a lot of guys. It takes out a lot of the concussion, which I think, for me personally, if I shoot a brake all weekend, 2 days straight, like I'm to Sunday, I'm just like mentally drained, right? So, being able to control that concussion is a huge, benefit for me personally. And then obviously, you still get some of the recoil reduction with the brake on the end. It's still allowing gases to flow through it. Takes out some of the bite, and it just feels really good. And I think 419, this is the old style, the V1 or whatever I don't know what they're terming the new one, the V2 or, but I think it's a little bit more directional and, maybe blows more gases back towards you, the shooter, to kind of take out some more of the bite.
The real nice thing is, so Garrett runs his in the mode that he has it. They're stackable, so it can run.
Yeah.
You basically add sections to it basically as it goes together. And what's nice about it, so I run mine in a little bit longer. I'll show you in a second. I run mine a little bit longer, but you can run it all the way out without. I think you can even do it with, if you order it properly, you can order it without the brake and run it like full 9 inches.
I myself can probably fit in at least 9 inches.
Like, yes, the full mode. If you just want to run a complete suppressor as quiet as possible, you can run it in that mode as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, obviously I have this is the serialized part. Yes. And then you can get the additional adapters, or it's all reverse thread, right? So obviously if you're familiar with 409 system, it reverse threads onto the muzzle adapter. And then all of the sections are reverse thread as well. The one additional, so I think they used to, at least, I don't know if they still do, but you could get them in like the full 9-inch, or there was like, you didn't have to get the mid extra baffle.
Yeah.
I got the extra baffle. I know that you like running the extra baffle. Like I said, I don't really have a preference. I can shoot it either way. And it really does a good job. If I feel like, I want it a little bit quieter, sure. If I want a little bit more recoil reduction, then I'll do this route. but it's super modular. It's super nice to be able to use it like that, kind of cater it towards the match that you're shooting, what caliber you're shooting, any of that stuff. And it works really well. So definitely.
The whole idea behind it is you get a suppressor and a brake, right? So the whole thought is that you're getting the best of both worlds when shooting something that has a suppressor on it as well as a brake at the end, that you're probably not getting, you're kind of cutting maybe the difference, splitting it. So you're not getting a full suppressor. It's not going to be as like perfectly quiet as it can be.
Yep.
And you're not getting maybe all the benefits of a true brake. But hey, let's get the median so that I get a kind of the best of both worlds.
Yep. Yeah, I think it really succeeds in doing that, right? Like it's a good middle ground. I think anybody that shoots a Maverick is like, oh my gosh, that's really, really pleasant to shoot.
Yeah.
When you shoot a full suppressor, it's a different recoil impulse than like a brake, right? Like a brake is more kind of like a jolt, whereas a suppressor is more maybe linear, like a more linear push, right? And this kind of splits the difference between them, and it's a really good feel overall. So I think that's why a lot of guys prefer to run this design. I think it's a really good setup, and obviously you have plenty of different options. This is a common theme, I think, when you start getting into builds like this. There's not so much like better or worse, it's just different, right? Like, so Thunder Beast is going to come out, or they have their RR line, and it's going to be just the same pretty much as this. It might be minute differences. A vast majority of guys that shoot this next to a Thunder Beast, I would say, are going to have a hard time telling the difference between the two. But overall, really like the 419 Maverick. It's been a mainstay, I think, on both of our rifles since they've been
out. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're on this.
For as far as competition goes, they're really awesome. Barrel.
So suppressor cover, right?
Oh yeah,
so,
sure.
Because we run different ones, and then
so this is Roush Precision, and I go through suppressor covers like women go through purses kind of thing. Anybody that knows me knows that I like to switch my gear around a lot, but I found the Roush covers. They're pretty cheap. This is like the B mod, I think they call it. It's not their pro version or whatever, because I like the bungee cords. I feel like I could torque them down real well and
not shoot your suppressor cover off.
Yeah, not shooting your suppressor cover off is definitely a goal. But obviously running a suppressor cover, when you shoot a couple of stages, this gets really hot, obviously. You start getting some mirage off the suppressors, off the barrel, and running the covers really helps to cut that down. So I like the Roush Precision. I think they're really nice for how much they cost. Obviously, there's a ton of different companies that make suppressor covers anymore, but you find stuff that you like and what your personal preference is, right? I think you're running like a Coltac.
Yeah, so I use the Coltac. This has got Velcro instead of the bungee. So if you can see, so this just slides down. This slides off, and then this is your inner liner. So you can see mine's slightly longer. So I run that extra. This is that extra piece. That's what
yours is longer, huh?
That's right. Don't tell anybody. Well, actually, tell a lot of people. And then still having the brake on the end. So this is my configuration, and then so same exact suppressor, and then just running the Coltac suppressor cover. And then what I like about those two is when you order the Coltacs is that you actually have to tell it the suppressor diameter. You typically tell them the model that you're running, the diameter, and the length. So they'll actually cut it specific. Like you can get this cut anywhere you want, and any length you want. So they basically make it very specific to. So it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get it. But it's pretty quick.
They usually have them in stock for the normal configurations.
I think we get them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
One thing that I run a little bit different than what Garrett has right now. I don't use this too much. I like it, and I don't like it. I don't know. I go back and forth. This is Eric Cortina's the tuner. So real quick, back to this. So again, that suppressor cover just for you if you're competing. We shoot, and typically you can go from an 8 to maybe a 12 round stage. If you're running 12 rounds on a hot day, so let's say it's 90 some degrees out, and you're running a suppressor and you go shoot a 12 round stage, and that's going to be in 110 seconds, not anywhere from 90 to like 110 seconds.
Yep.
If you're shooting that stage, this is going to get super hot. You're going to get all sorts of mirage that's going to show up in your scope,
If you get
and you're not going to be able to
point
see
of
it.
impact shift, I mean, it messes with your sight structure.
It's very important to have a suppressor cover when you're running
Yep.
when you're running it.
So if you-
Particularly in a match.
Tons of options, you know, that you can do. I don't think there's one that's, you know, better or worse.
Yeah, as long as you have something, you
as long as you
definitely
got-
if you're running a suppressor, you definitely want in a match.
I've seen guys who run like the shop rags, you know, just wrapped around them with zip ties and stuff like that. Maybe that's not quite as good as something like this, but you know, plenty of options and stuff like that. So it just definitely run one if you're gonna run a can, especially. You know, definitely run a cover on it, and just I think it's a big benefit, right?
So back to this tuner. Basically, the goal there is that you're able to kind of, when you go, so I shoot the same BR load pretty much. I don't really like to mess with my load all that much. And I will use the tuner, or I can use the tuner to kind of fine tune the load to whatever the barrel is. So barrels are always going to have a little bit different harmonics between. So in order to kind of eliminate that, the Eric Cortina, the tuner that he has, I think this is a Gen 1. There's definitely this was
Integrated brakes now, where it's like a tuner and a brake put together.
Yeah. So this is on here. I really honestly don't use it all that much. Typically a BR is just such an easy thing to load for that typically I get 1/4-inch groups out of this, and I take it, I put my load that I normally go, if it's 0.25 to 0.35, I'm just done, and I don't want to spend that much time wasting.
Well, and we'll get into more of that when we talk about like the barrels and stuff. But you know, any of the BR based stuff is so consistent. Like you really have to work to find a load that does shoot in one of these, right? So any like the BRs, the BRAs, the dashers, like any of that stuff, it's just they're so consistent, and they're great to load for because you put quality components in them, you know, burgers over, you know, Fargate or whatever, you know, that's the standard, right? In some good brass, Alpha or Lapua or whatever you got, and it's going to shoot, you know, generally pretty well. Yeah. Bartlett barrel. So this is a truck axle, as we like to call them. You know, full non-tapered, or it's I think an 1.25 inch, you know, diameter.
Yeah, the whole way.
The whole way. I personally so I just started. I think I got this one because it was in stock, right? You know, whereas before it's really I think a personal preference thing where if you just want that much weight out in your barrel, then you know obviously the truck axles are a good way to go. A lot of guys run like the heavy varmints or the MTUs. If you don't want the full truck axle,
it's a slight taper to it.
Yeah, it's just a slight taper.
Goes down to like 960, 980.
Yeah. Anything that's got some meat to it though is generally what we were looking for, right? Because we have seen, especially in like some of the carbon barrels and stuff, or like the thinner profiles, when you start to get some heat in them, you'll have slow of impact shift, right? So having the extra material around the bore is definitely a good way to go. When we're talking about PRS, you're introducing heat, and you need every round to go where you shoot it, right? So that's, I think, the purpose of it. But otherwise, it really comes down to more of a balance thing, right? I think a lot of guys nowadays are going much more towards the nose or the front heavy. Whereas before, back in the day, it used to be like, oh, you got to balance it right in front of the mag well kind of thing, whereas I think guys are trending more towards, maybe halfway down the forend or, a third of the way down the forend kind of thing, because it helps them control some of that muzzle rise, right? So when you have more weight out front, you're counteracting some of the recoil impulse when you're...
So one of the things to point out for people, so our rifles, when we shoot in PRS competitions, we look for typically very heavy rifles. So these are not rifles that you're going to go take out and go hunt with and so forth.
30 pounds.
Yeah, mine's like 26 pounds, right? So we have very heavy rifles because in a match when we're shooting, we have there's movement, but limited movement. And we have to hold it in between positions maybe and pick it up. But other than that, on that manipulation, we're really not going and we're moving it between stage and stage,
right.
Between stages, which is maybe 20, 30 feet between our stage. We're not having to go very far. So we don't care about how heavy the rifle is for transport to when we're moving. As long as I can manipulate that rifle on a stage, that's really all I care about. I need to be able to pick it up, move it to wherever I'm going to move it to and put it back down. Obviously, the lighter the rifle, the faster I'm potentially going to do that. So there's a balance that you want to find. Like, what can you manipulate? If you're shorter female or something like that wants a lighter rifle, get whatever you can manipulate. You don't want something that's so heavy, so big that you can't
Move it.
and pick it up. Like, you really want to be able to pick that thing up, because there's a possibility of DQing, if the rifle hits the ground, that's a disqualification as well.
Especially like getting it in and out of like
Getting in and out of
and stuff. Like, some of the positions, if you can't maneuver it easily, then it's so
I get lighter.
there's no right or wrong answer, right? I think a lot of that is personal preference. A lot of us like the heavier rifles because we feel like they settle better. When you're shooting positionally from a bag or something like that, they settle a little bit better. And then as far as like recoil goes, obviously more weight in your rifle is going to require more mass to move it, on recoil. So that weight definitely has some advantages in terms of felt recoil as well. So when you're talking about follow-up shots and wanting to stay on target, when you pull the trigger, that kind of thing, the weight really helps to counteract some of that, the recoil impulse that you feel. So again, I don't, 30 pounds, I would say, is probably an extreme as far as, especially when you're talking like, 223 or dashers, everybody's like around these smaller cartridges. It's like a 30-pound rifle. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's really boils down to personal preference, but
I've never looked at that. I think that probably from people I talked to, I think 18 to 22 pounds is probably the average, right? I would say that's where
it's
most of the rifles
crept up a little bit, or like more recently, I would say, probably 20 to 25 maybe pounds is like your average. Obviously 30 is, you're really heady at that point, right? Whereas, when you start getting down in the 18s, that's
you
like,
can maneuver it really fast.
Right.
But you would have run a barricade stage really fast.
Yeah. Do it with a light rifle.
An 18-pound rifle is going to be.
And again, it's all about the trade-offs, right? So what do you value? This is why we like the NRL hunter matches, right? They have weight limits. Like the sportsman division in PRS has a weight limit, right? So it's, again, it really boils down to what your application is and what you're trying to do with it, right? Like a rifle like this is not going to be set up for that. This is really, purpose built for PRS.
Yep.
And that's why, we make those decisions, right? But again, this is not like a one rifle fits all kind of thing, right? I think you're going to make different design choices, your barrel contour, how much weight you're running in your chassis, all that stuff is going to, play into that. And it's just preference, however you feel like you're going to do the best, right?
Yeah. So you can see if we put these up, like hopefully that shows on camera a little bit. So his is at 1.25 inches, right? Mine, I believe somewhere at this end, I want to say it's 960 is what I have this running at like right here. It's technically it's our contour that I have made for us.
That one for the dogs. Yeah. So, and I think, I started doing the 25-inch. I think that's 28 is what.
No, it's 26.
26?
Okay. I want to say it's 20. I want to say it's 27.
I think it might be a little bit longer.
Might be longer. All right. Maybe it's 27. I don't. I spin barrels on and off of my rifles. Like I change my socks. So unfortunately, it's hard for me to sometimes keep track of some of this stuff. I have 3 different rifles that I isn't completion. So
this one is 25 inches. So you can see I'm all the way down here. And
so it's 27.
20.
It's probably 27.
So again, and some of that just plays into what velocity you're looking to get, right? If you're trying to maximize the performance of a cartridge, then maybe you go with a slightly long barrel. I've just found that 25 inches is a good middle ground between weight, balance, and speed with the BR or the dasher stuff.
When I went to 28 inches, that took practice to pull that rifle and then I put a suppressor on the end.
Yep.
Right? So I'm running in this mode, 28 inches on a barrel with a suppressor. It really took some practice to be able to run that rifle in and out of barricades and so forth. If you practice enough with it, I feel like I could do it. And again, I was strong enough to be able to pick the rifle up because where you're going to pick that rifle up is you're not going to typically grab it from here. You're going to start grabbing it from the back and then knowing how to manipulate it and so forth.
Yep.
So again, it's all about, you have to find that I would say for new shooters, 24 to 25 is probably what I typically tell people if we're building a rifle for somebody and I'm like, hey, what
it's a good middle ground.
Yeah. You just basically say, you can do anything. if for every inch of barrel length, you're gaining somewhere around 20 feet per second, typically, in terms of on velocity of that round. So if I go to 24, let's say I'm at 2,800 feet per second, and if I go to 26, I'm going to be at 2840 to 2850.
With the same loads.
Everything being equal. If I just added 2 inches to that rifle, so if I want a little bit extra velocity, which is what I get out of I think this shoots right around 2860 or something like 2860 something like that, is the speed that I get out of my BR. So that's why I kind of use this.
Yep. And then this is a Bart line. I know that we've had good luck with obviously Bart lines. I've had good luck with Krieger. Brous is another big one. There's a ton of different cut rifle manufacturers anymore, and I think as long as you're sticking with one of the good brands, you're not going to have any issues. And that's not to say that like other cheaper barrel options don't shoot. Like I've seen so many people with what's Criterion or something like that have a rifle that shoots well. What we found with the bar lines and these really high-end cut rifle custom barrels is that they're just super consistent, right? And like they're not finicky. So it's like you just put whatever load in it, and it's like it takes all the guesswork out of it for you. And that's why we choose to run these types of barrels, right? Is like, you're going to pay a little bit more, and maybe it's a pain in the ass to source one, right? Because they can't keep them in stock. But in general, when you're running a really high-end rifle barrel, you're cutting out some of the, is it the barrel? Is it the load? Is it me, the shooter? Like, there's a number of different factors, right, that you can kind of limit, and that's I think why we choose to run those.
We have a video we just actually recorded yesterday about on Ask the Gunsmith that we talk about the difference between a cut rifle and a button rifle barrel. And if you want the absolute best consistency, particularly we talk about, is cut rifle. It's going to give you the same consistency, typically barrel to barrel to barrel. Button rifle, yes, you can get shooting very well, but we find that we see you can have inconsistencies in that one shot a 0.45 group, this one shoots a 0.35 group. Cut rifles, typically you can just dial them into quarter inch. If you're a good enough shooter, you can typically dial them in with a load and everything else on seating depth. And if you go through all the proper loading procedures, you can get it to shoot a quarter inch group.
No, and it's like one of those things too. It's like when you have it cut by a good gunsmith, like 360 Precision, right, with a good quality barrel. It's like we can take, if let's say that I shoot out this dasher barrel, and I have this load developed for it, I could spin the same barrel on it, get the same chamber, and it's going to shoot the exact same load, the exact same way on the next barrel, right? So the variance between different specific barrels is much less, I would say, on, what you're talking about, Bart line or Brooks or Krieger or any of those, right? Yep. So that's why we choose to run those, and it's just, again, I think that it takes some of the variability out of your whole kit. Let's say this is a dasher. I'm running a dasher 7.5 twist. I think is like just the standard 25 inches, like I said, and I think I'm shooting 109s and at like 2800 or right at 2800. And again, it's a good balance. I found that's gonna, I can shoot as far as, you're going to shoot in a reasonable PRS notch, right? Like, it's 12, 13, 1400 yards, maybe on the really high end. 2800 with a 109 is more than enough to get you there with consistency. So,
common misconception that we get a lot is people think that, we can eat this my 6BR, I easily shoot 1400 yards, no problem. Like, again, we're not looking at terminal ballistics. We're just trying to get it on target and be consistent. So this rifle is absolutely accurate out to 1400 yards. No problem shooting a 105. I shoot a 105, 109, a grain bullet at that speed is easily going to ring steel at that distance. You do not need, huge calibers. These are, again, when you're shooting in PRS, we need to be able to, so it's, you're the shooter, you're the spotter. You need to be able to identify, if you have a miss on a target, you need to be able to identify where that miss was. The larger the caliber, right, the harder that's going to be to spot that miss, or potentially even an impact, but what side of the plate did it hit? Right. So having the weight that we talked about, but also that lighter caliber, easily makes it to those distances, right? Is easily able to ring steel. The only one I would say is like caliber that I'd say is a 223 starts to
It starts to struggle a bit.
struggle at the past 1,100 yards. I'd say you might have a little bit of, particularly with wind and being consistent again.
Yes.
At those distances, it's not gonna have the same consistency as a 6mm round.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I mean, I float back and forth between Dasher and 223, right? Like, those are the two rounds that I primarily shoot anymore, especially when it comes to like PRS stuff. I just like shooting the lighter recoiling stuff. I think they're real fun to shoot. You know, they're super quiet with suppressors. They don't recoil at all. You know, whatever, you know, you have a bunch of different reasons. But the 6mm, the 6.5s, 25s is especially, you know, is a starting to become really popular. You're definitely going to get better downrange performance with anything starting, I would say, at 6mm and on up, you know, whereas 223, it gets you to 1,000 pretty easily, I would say, you know, especially with a bolt action rifle, right? Because when people say 223, they like think about AR,
16-inch,
yeah, with the gas system and it, you know, shooting lighter weight bullets, right? Like 55 grain bullets. When you're talking about a custom bolt action, you know, I was shooting 90 grain SMKs, I think, in the 223. You know, you have to get specific chambers so they have enough free bore and all that, right? To be able to shoot those rounds. So when you do that, I would say you can bring them closer to a 6mm realm in terms of ballistic performance, you know, downrange. So you can do the 1,000 yards pretty consistently, but beyond that, I would say they definitely start falling off a little bit compared to the 6.
Compared to a 6, again, it's
Again,
do it have
all
all I'm saying, right?
yeah,
It's just
100%.
we're comparing it to a 6mm.
Yep. And then, like you said before, we're not looking for necessarily energy on target. We're not, you know, I wouldn't go shooting a whitetail or something like that with it. But, you know, definitely in terms of steel performance, it's the 6mm are absolutely, you know, as much as you need or you can reasonably do with, you know, within PRS.
Let's move to the bipod.
Yep. So bipod, this is my MDT Skypod. I think this is like one of their like the Gen 1s. This is one of the early ones. It's still got the grip tape on it. It still has the pan feature. You know, these are super nice because they're just so maneuverable and kind of like you can kind of configure them in any specific way. So you can spread the legs out. You can bring them in closer. A lot of guys run like the double poles, you know, so you can get super high. I've kind of found like I've not moved off of this bipod because I found that I feel like when we first started shooting PRS, there was much more of a drive to shoot off of a bipod, right? Whereas nowadays, I feel like everybody is so comfortable shooting off of bags, like a Game Changer or something like that. Half the time, I'm just like, instead of messing with a bipod and worrying about the height and where it is on the fore end and all that, is it configured the right way for the stage? Can I get a bag under the rear and still see my target? You know,
A lot of those changed to rear support.
Right.
Everyone's going, forget about the
rear
bipod.
tripod.
Hey, just let me put a bag and do rear
tripod or something like that. Yeah.
And
so I would say outside of like prone or modified prone, I'm generally going to a bag at this point, right? Because it's faster and it's easier for me to get, you know, on target. Again, with how heavy the rifles are and how stable they are on a Game Changer, it's a lot of time less hassle to mess with the bipod. So again, that's the reason that I haven't moved off of like the Gen 1. I think it's a great bipod. It's held up well. This thing's been through hell and back. I think yours has been too.
Yeah, well, this is the Gen 2, and what I was going to show, we could kind of, so I have a double pole on this one, so I don't know if you want to extend. So this is mine, yeah, so that's mine fully extended, right? I'm holding up close to, we should be right about the same. Yeah, so they're right about the same. So you can see I get a couple, I think it's like 3 inches or something like that is the difference that you get between the double and the single pole. They do make a triple pole too.
Yep. Yeah, so it goes even higher.
It goes even higher.
Again, that's really more for like NRL hunter.
Yeah, there's a whole purpose built to that. I don't really think, the only reason I got the double pole is there's occasion, not really so much, it really just kind of takes, you have a little bit more adjustability. And that's why I went with that one. So I have the Gen 2 that I love. The Gen, I just ordered a Gen 3 from NDT.
Yep.
They have a couple of new features that I really like. And
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys run the you know, the Atlas bipods, you know, they still run those. I've seen a bunch of guys still with Harris. It really just depends. I think this is a 419 mount that I have on it. Basically, you know, it lets you slide it along the arc rail if you did want to run it back here, you know, for any reason. So this will actually stay adhered to it, and then you have one more setting, I think, where it'll just pop off, right? So again, it's just different mounts and stuff like that. I think MDT actually just has their own ARCA mount now that comes with them. You don't have to actually like put a new one on it, but yeah. So that's the bipod. You know, again, I would say really not a ton of use at this point. You know, it's really modified prone or prone stages, you know, something like that, where you're shooting off a car or a hood or something like that. You know, I would say that that's where you're really doing bipods, whereas everything else has just been, you know, going to bags at this point. So we talked about everything going backwards. So I guess we'll get to the stock next. So this is a Foundation Samson. I actually just got this recently. So this is this is the Foundation Samson, has the Genesis grip length, which I believe you have some Centurions, which is just, it's a little bit closer.
I have little tiny hands.
Big bear mitts. So running the Genesis grip, you know, so you get a little bit more length between where your grip is and where your trigger is. You know, just this one fits me a little bit better. You know, you have the longer forend with the brass inserts. I think you can also get these with aluminum. You've got the bridge or the hood or whatever they call it now. This one isn't really functional, I would say, for anything other than like Mirage or something like that. A lot of them you can put like rails and stuff. So if you're running like thermal or night vision or anything like that, you can put that right in front of your scope. And like I said, this thing is super nice. It's just super heavy, really dense. You know, anybody that runs the Foundations, they just say they're dead when you shoot them, right? So you really just, there's no like ting, there's no anything like that. It's just, and that's I think why a lot of guys like the Foundation stocks. You know, so it's got the full length ARCA rail. I know you made a steel rail for them that's been super popular with some of the older Foundation stocks. Run the brass inserts, and then if I go over like this, you can actually see I'm just running a Sykes clutch for my support hand, you know, when I'm up on positional. That's actually one of the other things too cool about the Skypods is like they just have so much cant to them. It's like that's gangster. So not that you should ever shoot that way, because I sure as shit wouldn't hit a target if I shot like that. But you know, if you did have a reason to, if you're shooting off of a mountainside or something like that, it's pretty nice.
And we talk about actually in our again that Ask the Gunsmith, we talk about the difference. So we both shoot a stock. We talk about some of the reasons that there's chassis out there. It really doesn't come down to, I don't feel that the good chassis that are out there, the MPAs, the MDTs, and so forth, are shoot every bit as well as the really good stocks, 100 Foundations, Manners. So it really comes down to a personal preference at this point, right? It's really how you feel connected to the rifle. I like the way chassis look. I just don't feel connected to them properly when I'm shooting. So I've tried a number of times. I've tried all the different chassis. And they just don't feel right to me. Like, and I think that just comes from, I think I said this in that.
Sure yours off. Sure.
Yeah. So this is the Manners. This is their TCS that we have here. A lot of the same features that the Manners has. I'm sorry, the Foundation has. One of the differences though that this runs, it's called a mini chassis. So instead of it being inletted specifically for an action, for the particular action, this is inlet, and the mini chassis allow you to put in multiple different actions.
Yeah, so Remington,
anything that's a Remington 700 basically works on this.
One thing to note, actually, so this was the older design mini chassis where the bottom metal is part of the mini chassis, whereas now I think the mini chassis is just like a V block in the chassis, and you still run a bottom metal with it. So just again, this is a couple years old, right? This TCS.
Oh my gosh, this has got to be 5-6 years old. Yeah, it's like when they first came out with the TCS.
Right. So again, if you have one of the older TCS stocks, again with the mini chassis, you're gonna get the single piece mini chassis inside of it with the bottom metal. So you're just putting the magret in. Whereas the new versions, I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe that they take a bottom metal, like a traditional bottom metal.
So, and I have a Foundation, like you were saying, the Centurion. I love, as long as it's a stock configuration to me that has the adjustability. So I have my other rifle that I shoot competition is a foundation stock. Pretty much the exact same setup though. Like almost everything else is identical. I keep one in one caliber and one at a different caliber. So I have two different calibers that I shoot. One's 22 GT and the other one, this is 6BR. For the most part, this is the rifle I shoot the most from a standpoint of, I guess the action. It's the action that really, this action just so broken in, it just becomes,
It's buttery
it's
smooth.
just buttery smooth.
Yeah.
So I just know this action so well and it just runs so well that that's the one I typically go to.
Yeah, I mean,
The other action that's on the other rifle, I had coded and it kind of got messed up. Unfortunately, that action did run phenomenal
I'm telling you,
and I coded it wrong.
you
so.
can build two different rifles with the exact same specs, and you will still have a preference as to which one you want to shoot more often.
Because it's mental.
Again, it's a mental thing for sure, but it's just like one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm gonna shoot. That's my main gun, right? Like that's the one that I'm gonna shoot, and they could have the exact. You could build them the exact same way, and you are still going to have a preference somehow. And again, that's why we talk about like I don't think it's really necessarily better or worse. It's just it's different in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think the manners, the foundations. I ran the ACC Elite last year. We've had the MPAs. The Vision's a big popular one now. I don't think there's really a wrong answer. It really boils down to just what's comfortable for you, the shooter.
100%.
Both you and I like the stock feel, but just the ergonomics and how it kind of fits your body. And I think that's really kind of how you have to do it, right? But we've had pretty much every configuration under the sun at this point.
Yeah, I've shot most of them, and I keep coming back to this.
Yeah.
I've been shooting this for 6 years.
Yeah.
I think I've been shooting BR for 5 years now because we shot right before the bad time that we had at 2000. Right before that, I think I shot 6 Creed for that season.
Yep.
Which was awesome because I was able to
That's actually
buy factory.
That's
ammunition.
really where we started with the tuners, right? When we were
Yeah,
shooting like the factory
exactly.
ammo, because then you could get like Lapua or Burger ammo, and then you just mess with the tuner basically. So you're kind of as long as the spreads are good, then you just dial in the tuner to get it to where your groups are consistent and nice and tiny, and like that's how we ran them. So a lot of times that's why I don't run the tuners anymore, is because when you're doing full load development, it's just something else to mess with. Whereas when you're running like factory ammo or something like that, then I could see the benefit of these because you have a way to tune it specifically to your rifle.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's why I really don't mess with because it just always seems to shoot. So I really have to mess with it. I'm like, look, I put the load in, it shoots. Okay.
But they do work. Like I mean,
yeah,
if you can turn it,
you can mess with it.
Yeah.
You can see the groove
it'll
open up.
It'll
You
open
can
up,
see
or it'll tighten up. Like they definitely work. In like for what they're designed to do. It's just when you're talking about running premium components like barrels, in a good stock, with good actions, good gunsmiths, all that stuff. I just think that there's limited purpose or functionality for them. So
Yeah.
agree. You're on the Defiance, right? The OG Defiance Deviant,
Yeah.
a 90 degree.
That's what it is.
So I'm old. I'm not gonna say how old I am on this video. Maybe another video. Yeah. So, yeah. No, this is the Ruckus. I thought you would say this is a Ruckus. Yeah. So this was when the Ruckus first came in.
Yeah.
It's Defiance. It's just the Ruckus. It's not their
Not the Deviant.
not the Deviant. My other one is the Deviant.
Okay.
So I run this one has the Ruckus, and then I have the Deviant. So I originally used to run the Deviant, which is why it was my original action. And then I switched when the Ruckus came out. I did the Ruckus on this one, but then when I got the Deviant coated and screwed up, it just doesn't run. It runs smoothly now. It didn't. It took a while to bring it back in.
I remember you didn't like it at first.
I didn't like it. It's still not now as smooth as this one. So basically, that's probably the reason I always kind of lend myself towards this rifle.
Yeah.
Is the action. You just get really into a timing thing, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
The more you run it, you just know how it's gonna feel. If it doesn't chamber, like I know from the feel of just everything on how it feels.
Yeah.
Like you just know it. It's second nature what to do. Like, that didn't run around through, or something happened with the mag or whatever. And it's just like, okay, I got that feel at that point. The more you shoot it, so it's just a comfort. It all comes down to a comfort, because really when you're shooting and you're on the clock, you got to realize that all that stuff, like kind of that buzzer goes off, your mind just kind of goes into muscle memory mode. Like, so you need as many things as possible to go into muscle memory.
Yeah.
And not have to think about, so that you can think about, okay, I got a dial, I got a hold, I got my wind, all the things that you do have to do on the clock and aren't muscle memory because that's how the stage was designed. Those are the things you need to focus on.
Yeah. You
Not
be
the
worried
simple.
about, oh, this one didn't feed right, and I gotta, mess with that. Like, drop a mag out, put a new one in. Like, you want to cut as much of that out as possible.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I went full Okie boy on these Oklahoma builds with the foundation stock and the impact action. Obviously impact's been out for a while. They're super popular, super nice and smooth. Again, there's not really like a performance difference, I wouldn't say, between impact and Defiance and Lone Peak and all these different ones anymore. The only difference here is I'm running the 75-degree bolts. So, a little bit shorter on the stroke. I think Defiance actually has 75-degree bolts now too. So again, it's just a little bit smaller. Generally the trade-off, so that you have like Terminus, which is like your 60-degree 3-lug actions, whereas these are traditionally 2-lug 90-degree actions, right? So this is a 2-lug 75-degree action, right? And it just kind of splits the difference between them. 90 degree is generally going to be a longer swing, so you have the longer up and down when you have a cock and close, like all that stuff. It's a longer open and close. And the advantage to that is it's generally a lighter lift and a smoother lift compared to like a Terminus, where it's a 60 degree, so it's a much shorter stroke, but you still have to cock the firing pin the same distance, right? So it's a heavier open, close.
Comparing the two.
Just
like,
relative.
if you're running it really fast, it would be super hard to really
Yeah,
tell.
I would say I can't berate that point enough, right? Where it's not even like there's one that's better or worse than the other. It's just a personal preference thing, right? So I found the 75-degree impact bolts are a nice middle ground, between feel and just quickness. We drive it home right, like fast is smooth or smooth is fast kind of thing, that's
a fairly new item, so you haven't really been running it that long.
Yeah.
Again, I'm like Garrett likes to change stuff more frequently than I do.
Sure.
I think that this build is exactly the same as what it was probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I just rebuild mine exactly the same
Yeah.
every single time. I don't change really anything.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say is every time that we'll talk about scopes in a second, that's probably the only thing that I've changed. And as new reticles have come out, I've upgraded my scope basically just for the reticle, because I like there's just new things that have been done specifically again for the PRS market that make it just a little bit better on the reticle. The glass is still the same and I still keep all my old scopes because I use them on other rifles. But like for competition, what I'll do is I'll typically move that scope to something else and then build that scope on the new with the newest equipment or change or whatever that I want to do. So
yeah, I think that pretty much does it for the rifle itself.
you got your trigger.
Yeah, so Trigger Tech Diamond, that's one of the things that I've always run. I think since they started coming out with the diamonds. This is one of the newer, they call them rough diamonds now, so it's a little bit different from this one's blue, and I think the original diamonds are red, right, or the gold or whatever, something like that. Maybe red. But basically, the original diamonds went down to 4 ounces, and then Trigger Tech was like, well, nobody's using the 4 ounce, range, generally speaking, for PRS. Generally guys are running the 1 pound, 1 pound and change realm. So this is I think a relatively new trigger. I don't know when they came out, the rough diamonds, but this one goes down to 8 ounces, I think, instead of 4. And I think they did some other things as far as like how it's sealed to maybe make it a little bit more durable with some like the dusty environments and kind of just some of that stuff. So they don't, they should be a little bit more reliable, quote unquote. Not that the original diamonds were bad by any means, but that's the idea, I think, behind the rough diamonds. So that's what this is.
Single stage.
Yep, single stage. I like the flat shoe. I know that some guys, they like the curves, they like 2-stage, whatever it is. Again, it's just a personal preference thing. I feel like I've said that 100 million times already. There's not really a right or a wrong answer. It's just I like the feel of a single stage. You just hit that wall and you're just there. Set the weight to where you want it, and you're good, right? I think you're running flats too, right?
Yeah. Flat single stage. No, wait.
What do I got?
I gotta look. I don't even know. Like again, everything comes.
Oh, that's a
Curve. So I like the Pro Curve. Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say. So on a when I do an AR platform, I'm typically gonna run a flat. I don't know why. Again, it's a personal, like you were just saying, it's a personal preference thing. I do run a single stage trigger. I run it at about a pound and a quarter, something like that is the weight on it. I feel at that point, I'm not going to ever touch one off until I'm ready at that weight. So, and you do have to, good trigger pull is going to be key at that point, right? That squeeze when you're going to set that level. I mean, that's the reason that whole really super light is so you can kind of negate your trigger pull. I'm not a big fan of that because it's way too easy to potentially touch one off when you're not ready. We go into a whole thing in one of the videos about just not closing the bolt until you're on target.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons that we do that. So you're on target, you close the bolt, and then at that point, once I've closed the bolt, that's when my finger will start to go to the trigger.
Yeah.
I'm now on target. That's a big thing for people to practice if you're new to the sport and so forth, is not closing the bolt till you're on target, and then just watching that trigger finger discipline of keeping it off until you're on target, basically.
You know, I would say on the topic of like trigger weights, you know, we run these triggers because they don't have any creep, right? Like they have like a super crisp break, right? So like you're not like getting to the wall and then there's like a little bit of creep, you know, that could potentially throw up a shot, right? All of these are going to be super crispy breaks. And, you know, so Bix and Andy, Trigger Tech, like any of those like really high end triggers are going to be really good in that sense, right? Like we're just going to have a nice clean break. Whereas the weight, I would say, is again a preference thing, right? Because you, like everybody would say, oh, the lightest trigger's the best, you know, because you just get on and you just barely touch it, and it's that's the least amount of, or you're minimizing the possibility of going off target during your trigger pull, right? Whereas I think a lot of guys in PRS are running generally closer to a pound and a half, even 2 pounds maybe, because it does give them that little bit of buffer. So, you know, when you put your finger in the trigger guard, you're not just like breathing on the thing and it's going off, right? You want a pretty good wall there so that you're only pulling the trigger when you're absolutely right, intending to pull the trigger. Yep. So again, like the don't get so caught up in the weights, I would say, you know, again, just run it to whatever feels right for you, but definitely, you know, experiment with heavier breaks, because I don't think it's as bad as everybody makes it out to be. I know that, again, that's why a lot of guys like the 2-stage triggers, right? Because it gives you that first stage to kind of get to you're only pulling the trigger when you're intending to.
So for mounts,
yep,
for the scope, we'll go to the scope. Last topic here that we'll go into. I mount bend scope. I have a spur mount on it right now, but that's what I don't change a lot. There are the Area 419. I'm a huge super fan of. Dave from Gray Ops, phenomenal.
Hawkins is the one that I run.
Makes another phenomenal one. So there's a lot of good scope mounts that are out there. You definitely want to get a quality scope mount. Typically in PRS, you're not going to run rings. I mean, you can run.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but the one-piece mounts,
the one-piece mount is typically what you're going to find on most boards.
Yeah, now.
And then there's some little nuances between them, like when you want to attach the bridges on the top, you know, so you can see on that one, right, it's got that bridge, or the diving cord, whatever you want to call it. You can do that on a lot of them. Levels sometimes built into it. Here, so you can look at like different things like that, different accessories and so forth. You can see mine. I don't know if so right here, I have my level attached. I don't have a diving board running on mine. So you can see kind of there's no additional piece like Garrett has on his. Yeah. But yeah, so then good mount, obviously, always want to make sure that it's, I forget if we talked about this in we did talk about it in our Ask the Gunsmith series, just to making sure everything's torqued on. And I think it was Francis just did a video from MDT that you can go check out, that talks about, before you go shoot a match, make sure everything's torqued properly,
Yeah.
right? Because that's like the worst thing you want to walk into. You walk into a match, everything's great, you think everything's good, you got your load, everything, and like one of your action screws loosened up, particularly if you fly or if it's been transported, and a screw loosened somewhere, and now it starts shooting like garbage, or it's got flyers, things are going, so you can't explain what's going on. There's a lot of times where we say like that can come down to one of those little things that you want to check.
Yeah, a lot of guys like it's probably hard to see on here, but a lot of guys will run like witness marks on them just to
make sure
give you a visual checkpoint to be like, all right, that I know that the screw's turned or whatever.
Yeah.
It's another thing to look at, to check, and you see that, all right, my screws are all torqued down to what they were. Should be good to go.
So I run from a scope standpoint. I've always just been a big fan. Jeff from Zero Compromise Optics, the ZCO scopes. I've been running, almost since Jeff first started.
Yes,
I would say about 2018, something like that, is when I started shooting
Yeah,
CCOs. And I have a lot because again, I progressed to the reticles. I still have my first one that I bought. I forget which it's on. I think my 22 LR rifle that I have. My Rimex. So I keep them. And I just run them down to other rifles, and then again, typically where I upgrade is my main competition rifle, and now I just started running. They went from 15 mil to 10 mil turrets. Took a little bit of time to get used to that. This is actually still the 15, I believe, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So this is still the 15. The 10, I have two new scopes that I got from Jeff that are on the other competition rifle and another rifle. And that going back and forth is really the biggest challenge, because you want to realize that you can go a rev out pretty easily.
Yep.
The reason I liked the 15 was because on a PRS match, I never went a rev out. I never went above 15.
You never went above 15, right?
So I never had to worry about going a rev out.
Whereas 10, the trade-off is that you have closer clicks, right? So when you're under the pressure of time, on a stage, it's easy to get, a click or two off here or there because they're much closer together. So when you're just spinning that thing, trying to get to the next target,
that's why my new scopes are 10.
Right, the 10 mil.
You just have to always go back to zero. It's like you leave a stage, put it back to zero, right? I don't even know if that might now be a rule.
I think they do. They like to, push that. It's like, hey, when you get off the stage, zero your turret out, so that we know, or that you're not a rebel.
I want to target it. Like, we're going to be all right, and I near it.
But I didn't see any splash, like,
or something like that.
So again, I think it's that's more of a feel thing, right? It's if you like the closer. Another thing on the Zecos and a lot of the other like popular scopes, I know that Night Force got them, Vortex has them, the competition turrets now where they're writable, like dry erase writable. So basically, in lieu of like a data card like Dan's running here, a lot of guys have transitioned to putting.
This little card pulls off. You just put some tape on it. You write your numbers on it. Velcro's onto here. What I like about it is online. I can flip it out of the way if I don't need it. If I'm shooting just a single target on a stage, I just go, what I don't want it in my way. I don't want it distracting me. So I'll just flip it over to the side.
Whereas a lot of guys now, again, the competition turrets have basically like a writable surface on them, right? So it still has all your clicks and your little dash marks, but you can write exactly on the turret. Let's say you have 4 targets on a stage. You can, say, all right, I know that on the second target, I'm at 2.4 mils, and you write just a little dot on the 2.4 and then the number 2, so that instead of counting out the individual click marks, you're just going 1 to 2, right?
This does have the locking turrets as well. My newer ones do not have locking turrets.
Again, for PRS, you're not really like bumping turrets, right?
I don't. So that's just been. I think the original he didn't have a non-locking. Then he came out with the non-locking, and now I think it's primarily like most of his sales have gone to the non-locking.
Yep.
At least in the 5x27 and the 8x40s, he has the new scope that we saw at SHOT Show. That's the 4x20. You'd still probably want locking. In a hunting environment.
Or like, any of those where you're like carrying your rifle around, like where you had it dialed to something specific and you have the potential to hit it on something or roll it, yeah, like that's definitely an advantage. But again, for PRS, square range matches, stuff like that, where you're generally not like, there's limited opportunities for you to like, hit a turret and then knock it out of where it was.
So specifically, I'm one of the other reasons that I really like what Jeff has done here, on the reason I'm such a big fan of Zero Compromise, is simply the eye box for this scope. It's almost impossible to not find your eye box, particularly if you're trying to shoot a weak side.
Yeah.
So if you have to go left eye, or I'm right-handed, so if I have to shoot with my left hand in my weak side, right, then you're gonna have to find that eye box, and that is harder to do. The tighter an eye box is, the more difficult you're gonna have with those type of stages. I do actually like those stages. I find that they're challenging and kind of interesting when you shoot them. But yeah, so the eye box here on this is phenomenal. The glass on these is, again, I have terrible eyes, so the better the glass can be, the better for me.
In a lot of scopes now, I know that they like the Zicos are 36 mil tubes. The new Marches are 36. I think the Collies are 36 millimeter.
35. No, that's
I think they're all 36s anymore. So you have a really wide field of view. So when you're on, let's say, 18 zoom, you still get a wider field of view than you would in like a 30 millimeter tube with an 18 zoom.
Yeah.
So you just get to see more, right? So even though your magnification is the same, you still have a wider target area that you're looking at. So I am a little bit of an oddball. I run a little bit lesser known scopes. This is a Minix ZP5. I ran these for a while ago, like, I don't know, a couple of years back. And I found that I really like the glass on them. I think they're really quality for the price point. I've not had any of them fail. They're super, super consistent, pretty durable. The glass is excellent. So, again, it's a personal preference thing. 15 mil turrets on these. This is a 5-25 with a 34 millimeter tube. So again, a little bit maybe older tech now. A lot of guys running the 36 millimeter stuff anymore. I just found that these fit my eyes really well, and I really like the reticle that's in them. I've had good luck running these with consistency and that kind of thing. A lot of guys will know me from like the USO days. US Optics was a pretty good scope manufacturer. Zico, Night Force, Vortex, really any of those guys are, make good quality scopes, I would say.
The best thing that you can do if you get the opportunity, if you go to a match or you have friends and so forth, is get behind each, a couple different pieces of glass. I mean, there's obviously very different price points between some of the things that we're talking about. So look, a ZCO scope is going to be fairly expensive, right? It's one of the most expensive scopes that's out there. I think if you got behind it, most people would say, yeah, it's probably the best glass that they've been behind.
Right.
So, and particularly, again, it's when it comes to Mirage, I think it handles Mirage probably better than almost any other scope out there, which is one of the reasons that I like it so much. One of the many reasons. But yeah, so, but price is obviously depending upon your budget and what you're able to put into it. You want to watch and make sure that it fits within the budget of what
realistically, I mean, like all the Zicos, the Marches, all the newest Collies are like above $4,000, I think, anymore. Whereas like the Minix, for example, I think I got the like Euro Optics running like 50% off sales, so I think it was like 1,800 or 2,000. And again, you're talking about, the different price points, right? It's not to say that there's any one that's better or worse than the other. It's different options, right? So if you want the absolute best, then you obviously go to more something like a Zico. But that's not to say that there aren't cheaper options or more economical options in terms of performance and durability and all that stuff, right? So again, I've had good luck with the Minix. I had good luck with USO. I know a lot of guys like the Vortex anymore. Any of those different scopes. It's not to say that there's one that's better than the other. But it's just, again, it boils down to a preference thing, and that's why we have so many options, right? So
yeah, so that's pretty much our builds that we have here. So I appreciate, hopefully everyone enjoyed kind of getting to see our two builds. Again, if you have questions, please post them in the comments. We'll be happy to try to answer anything that we can that you might have, as far as if you're looking to do a build, you want to do, you have just questions on what you're looking for. A great way though is to go to, if you can find a match that's local to you, as typically like 1 day matches are typically easy to kind of just mull around and get to meet some people that are in the community and so forth. So it's really great from that standpoint. And we've had this on other podcasts and other things, that videos that we've talked about, where, you know, you talk to people that are just lifelong friends you kind of meet at these things.
Yep.
I mean, that's how we met. I don't know, 6 years, 7 years, I guess, 7, 8, something like that, a number of years ago that we met. And that's you just meet some of the best people at these matches, and you can become lifelong friends. But you know, everyone is always so kind to be able to let you see different things you want to see. Hey, like, I forget, there was a match I was trying to look through I was trying to figure out new binos to buy, and I'm like, oh, can I look through yours? Can I look through yours? You know, as long as they're not set up on a stage and they're in the middle of watching or spotting something, that's not when you want to go up and ask. But hey, in between a stage or after the match or something like that, hey, can I check those out? Can I take a look through that?
No, it's like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've met anybody at a PRS match where you're like, hey man, do you mind if I get on your rifle, like mess around with it? You know, especially if they're not prepping for a stage, if you just catch them on like a train up day or just, you know, hanging out, packing about for a match, like, hey, can I get on your rifle? I don't think I've met one single person that's like, no, absolutely not. Like, don't touch my shit.
You've met one. I know one. We're not going to mention.
We're not going to name any names, but you know, for the vast majority of guys are generally very accommodating, very like, hey man, like, get on my rifle, like, check it out. Yeah, absolutely. Check out this scope, check out this stock, check out this whatever. You want to shoot it? Like, here's 20 rounds. Like, you know, there's so much of that. There's a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of brotherhood. And I think from all different walks of life too, right?
Oh, yeah.
We, it's like you meet guys from everywhere, all over the place, different parts of the country, different professions, all that stuff. And generally speaking, you're not going to find a better group of dudes. You know, they're shooting matches. So, yeah, no, absolutely. But I would agree, you know, the biggest thing is, you know, being able to go and test those different things out, see what you like for yourself. Again, there's not really a right or wrong answer. There's not better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really the brunt of it.
So make sure you like and subscribe to the video down here. Make sure, again, you hit that little bell. That's going to get you notifications of all the new stuff that we drop on YouTube. Also, you can go check out these 2 videos here, which is going to give you additional content that we've provided. So thanks for everything, guys, and appreciate it. And we'll see you soon.